be a candidate for
10 years ago this week, longtime Rochester Mayor Tom Ryan said 20 years at the top was enough, announcing he would not seek re-election. Less than a month into his presidency, Bill Clinton signed the Family and Medical Leave Act, tennis great Arthur Ashe died of complications from AIDS, and the bills fired General Manager Bill Powell. 20 years ago this week, the law went into effect requiring servers to report tips as taxable income. Upon seeing their entire check had been eaten up by taxes, Rochester waitress Margaret DeRycke sent her pay stub to President Reagan. It earned her a spot on the Today Show, and if you think that's a trip, just check out a youthful Jane Pauley, who interviewed her about it this week in 1983. It was unusually warm 30 years ago this week, literally and figuratively, as cops turned up the heat on Rochester mob boss Frank Valenti. Lincoln was in its second year producing the Continental Mark IV. Many a local Catholic girl went to school at the dearly departed St. Agnes High near Genesee Valley Park, and at the head table at the Press Radio Club dinner was the reigning National Football League most valuable player, running back Larry Brown, fresh off his best season ever with the Redskins team, which barely lost to the undefeated Miami Dolphins in Super Bowl 7. 40 years ago this week, before cell phones, faxes, pages, or FedEx, this was the means to get the word to someone quickly, and is the subject of this week's pop quiz, which is, what do you think this lady is doing? Back then, they were doing the twist of the brand-new Teen Canteen on Titus Avenue in Irondequoit. Responding to a demand from young people for a place to dance, the old Grange Hall was converted into a hangout for high school kids. Master of ceremonies at the grand opening was WROC Radio's Gary Smith. If the building looks familiar, it might be because you've either visited or seen it in a commercial. The landmark structure is today the home of the House of Guitars. And whatever happened to the dashing young DJ signing all those autographs? Well, 40 years later, Gary Smith remains one of Rochester's most popular radio personalities. It was all News 8 then.
Waitress Margaret DeRycke gasped when she received a paycheck amounting to nothing.
I opened it up and saw a void written across it. You know, I thought it was a joke at first. I was starting to laugh at first. And then all of a sudden it hit me. It's real.
DeRycke made $120 last week and paid $120 in taxes. The words void, void, void stamped across her paycheck stem from the tougher reporting rules on tips.
The pay I did receive all went for taxes. This on the side is the note that I am sending to President Reagan with my check. And on it says, President Reagan, you have taken all of my tips, my pay. You might just as well have the paper it is written on. I feel he is the one that's done this to us. I mean, maybe he has to make tax cuts and he's got to make money up. But when he gets to the point he's taking my paycheck and I'm going home with nothing, then next time I'm going to start fighting for myself. I would just tell them thanks for the job they've done to us. I don't think it's fair. I mean, they're walking around with money in their pocket, and we can't even depend on going out to a grocery store each week and buying groceries. I'm just going to keep fighting this, and I'm going to stay at work as long as I possibly can until I can't work no more. But in the meantime, I'm going to fight them all the way.
DeRycke is sending out petitions to protest the tip tax increase, and she hopes to present them in person to President Reagan. And if that's not possible, she says she'll dump them on the steps of the Capitol. Jeff Nordkowski, News 8.
Now requires restaurants to report at least 8% of their sales as tips. What that means for the health is larger and larger deductions in their paychecks, sometimes reaching extremes. Consider the case of Margaret DeRycke. Am I saying DeRycke, thank you, a waitress in Rochester, New York. Now, Margaret works 29 and a half hours at $2.45 per hour. Her gross income for 1 week was $103.55. Her total deductions that week, including taxes, Social Security, insurance, etc., came to $103.55. Her total take for the week was nothing. Now that happened because the IRS decides that you should have been making 8%
for each and
every table you serve.
That's right.
In Rochester, you don't get 8% tips?
In Rochester, we do not. I can't speak for the other restaurants, but in our restaurant, there's no way possible.
Well, what's a typical customer?
A typical customer in our restaurant is either senior citizens, family, or people, working people on their lunch hours.
And how much do they leave on the table for you?
Some leave 25 cents, some leave 50 cents, some leave $1.
Percentage-wise, is that what, 5% maybe?
Around 5%.
But what are you going to do, Margaret? You're going to stay a waitress? Can you afford to work for nothing?
Well, not really, but I thought that I've got the waiters and waitresses behind me. I've got the company behind me. I've got to hold on until I possibly can't hold on any longer. But in the meantime, I'll still go to work every day, the hours I'm supposed to, and still do my job.
So leave the ladies something, for heaven's sakes.
It's hogwash. I don't believe a word they said. I got no money. And I just don't expect any money.
Margaret DeRycke's check is a perfect example of the confusion. Last week, she earned $89 in tips, but under the law, she should have earned 8% of her gross receipts, or $120. She was taxed for $120. The result, a zero paycheck.
The confusion, I think, is some of the employers are now taking the total receipts for the waitress for the day and saying, okay, we're going to withhold on 8% of that figure. That isn't the way the law reads. They should only withhold on whatever tips that person has reported to them. And if an employer finds that they're in an area that their waitresses aren't getting at least even 8% in tips, they can write to the district director in Buffalo stating the reason.